Let's bring in MSNBC host of The Last Word, Lawrence O'Donnell. He's been in the courtroom. We've been talking about that Mitt Romney interview with Stephanie Ruhle last night.
Yeah, I didn't see the interview, but I'm aware of Mitt Romney being the pardon advocate, and I think history has proved the absurdity of that position. It wasn't terribly shocking when Gerald Ford issued that pardon to Richard Nixon. People on both sides felt in many ways it was a reasonable thing to do, but there was actually a very substantial segment of the population, possibly half, that disagreed with that pardon. And what history has shown is that pardon taught Donald Trump that presidents can get away with anything. That is the long-term effective damage of that pardon. And to be advocating a pardon for the most criminal president that anyone has ever seen just put Mitt Romney into a level of obliviousness of where we are in Trump world that was kind of shocking.
Can I ask you another kind of political question? And I'm going to read this directly from the New York Times. And we were discussing earlier before you came out, the parade. It's like 10 people from the House, people there supporting Donald Trump, who believe that he's being railroaded. As the New York Times points out, House Republicans had a vote scheduled for this afternoon to rebuke President Biden for his decision to pause an arms shipment to Israel. The bill was designed to divide Democrats and embarrass Mr. Biden, and had no chance of passing the Senate or becoming law. But with so many Republicans off campus demonstrating their fealty to Mr. Trump, they left open the possibility that the party's own messaging bill could be defeated. I'll let you take that one.
So, you know, there's that old phrase that comes from Parliament, backbencher, meaning someone who's, you know, not a relevant player in the Parliament or in the Congress, a backbencher. Most of those faces that you just saw in that photograph were, to their shock, relegated to literally the back bench of the courtroom because there wasn't enough space in the first two rows where the Secret Service occupy a couple of seats and the Eric Trump frequently occupies a seat. And other Trump supporters occupy some seats. And so only a couple of them got into that front row space. Matt Gaetz is one of them who got into the front row space. But and by the way, a good 6 or 7 of them I couldn't recognize without their congressional pins on their lapels. And so they didn't, I think, get the treatment inside the courtroom that they were hoping for. But the whole game for them was what they were going to say to the microphones outside of the courtroom.
Okay, let me ask you about what happened inside the courtroom, because right before the judge called lunch, Todd Blanche seemed to be building into a kind of crescendo. He was raising his voice, at least according to our document, and he was trying to make the point that he believed that Michael Cohen was lying about this phone call where he supposedly told that Donald Trump that these hush money payments had been made to Stormy Daniels. They're saying, no, this was really just a call about a 14-year-old prankster who was making phone calls. Tell us your feeling as you were watching it and what you observed. And was that a moment where Todd Blanche seemed to be connecting?
Oh, by far, it's the most important and biggest point the defense has scored so far. There's nothing else comes close to comparing to it. So, you know, a couple of hours this morning, most of it was in an irrelevant space. But it was on the credibility issue of Michael Cohen, which for the defense really is the entire area that they want to concentrate on. But what was crucial about this testimony is this testimony was about Stormy Daniels and about the Stormy Daniels payoff and about Michael Cohen credibility. And there's a phone call at 8:02 p.m. that was identified in the phone logs the other day by the prosecution, direct examination of Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen identified that phone call as a call he made to Keith Schiller, who is always, as many people know, standing right beside Donald Trump in those days. And he made the point, which a lot of people can confirm, that he used to call Keith Schiller when he wanted to talk to Donald Trump, so that Keith Schiller could hand the phone to Donald Trump. So the other day, that went in smoothly and seamlessly as a phone call to Keith Schiller. Keith Schiller's number where Michael Cohen only talked to Donald Trump and talked to him only about Stormy Daniels, saying, we've got to make the deal now. It's time to make the deal. This is October 2016. And that's how that phone call went in. Well, Todd Blanche really went at that phone call and did some real damage to Michael Cohen's credibility about that actual phone call. He pointed out that there were some text messages that preceded that Michael Cohen was involved in that included his problems with a harassing phone caller who he discovered turned out to be 14 years old. He texted Keith Schiller about that harassing phone caller and what could be done about it. And he texted Keith Schiller right before the 8:02 phone call. And Keith Schiller's reply to him in the text, which we did not learn until this cross-examination, Keith Schiller's reply to him in the text was, "Call me." And so the next thing that happens with those phones is that Michael Cohen calls him within the minute that Keith Schiller says, "Call me." And Keith Schiller's "call me" is about the phone harassment that Michael Cohen has been suffering from a 14-year-old. And so Michael Cohen's testimony became that the call was actually about two things. He quickly said something to Keith Schiller about the 14-year-old, and then spoke to Donald Trump about it's time to make the deal with Stormy Daniels. The trouble is that phone call is 1 minute and 36 seconds long. Now, it is possible to conduct both of those pieces of business in that amount of time, for sure, especially in the way we've heard how elliptically and quickly Donald Trump can speak in situations like this on the discussion that Michael Cohen did tape with Donald Trump. But this phone call and what that allowed Todd Blanche to do is that dramatic moment that every cross-examining lawyer wants in the criminal defense practice. That was a lie. He boomed, "That was a lie," a couple of times to Michael Cohen on the witness stand about Michael Cohen's previous description of that 8:02 p.m. phone call. And that was a very powerful and effective moment for the for the Trump defense.
Lawrence, always love your insights. Thank you so much for coming out to the camera for us. We'll see you tonight. He has a lot more observations from inside the courtroom on The Last Word, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on MSNBC.